Hello and welcome to the Permaculture Herbalism segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I am your host, Tonielle Christensen from Earth Mumma, where I teach people how to thrive and get skilled for sustainability. As an educator, kitchen witch, and plant lover, I welcome you to tune in as I interview permaculturalists from around the world. We will learn holistic ways of integrating plants into our homes, gardens, and communities for healing. Together, we will explore the art and science of this regenerative design system and harvest the collective wisdom. Permaculture offers a pathway to empower people to develop their lifestyles and landscapes. So let's discover how to grow and know plants with a purpose. So I thought I would do something new, something to celebrate our second year in our podcast journey, and being that it is spring and we usually do a special spring edition, this time I'm going to hold and facilitate this episode all about tropical superfoods. Some of you might already know that I have written a book called The Incredible Edibles Tropical Superfood Guide. And within that are the top 32 plants that I believe, through my experience, everybody in the tropics and subtropics could easily be growing to provide food, fiber, and medicine for their gardens. So that it's essentially a list of what to get started in your garden. And out of that 32, I'm going to narrow down today and just choose three. Those three plants are Ceylon Spinach, tropical ginseng, and moringa. Now, the reasons why I've chosen them is because those plants are talking to me right now. We're in spring, and this is the temperature is heating up, and these plants thrive so well over the wet season. And over the years, as I have taught lots of permaculture workshops from my garden, I am constantly being told by people that they can't garden, and they've come to learn, but they've had all these experiences and they're kind of thinking that they've got a brown thumb or what's happening. And when I dig deeper, a lot of the times people are buying seedlings from large retail nurseries, and they're out of season. Like they're southern crops that don't grow in our summer climate, and they're coming, they're getting these little seedlings and then they're planting them in our very hot weather, and they're not succeeding. And so I just want to bring it back and just kind of make a real point that perennial plants are really important in our food systems. Of course, within our own home gardens, they are very easy to grow. And these particular plants in my book, they almost grow like weeds throughout summer, throughout our wet season. And the power of these plants as perennials is that you plant them once and then you propagate them. Most of the time they self-propagate, which means they keep growing bigger. They might snap off, they might self-seed, but they, once planted, the particular crop or the plant continues to grow, as opposed to an annual plant which has its life cycle within a year and within its own season. So the seed will be planted, it will produce, it will grow, it will produce its fruit, it will go to seed, and then it will produce its leaf if we're talking about lettuce. It will, or a tomato or a capsicum, it will go in. Even basil, there's annual basils that will go to seed and then it will die back. You save those seeds and then you wait for the right conditions in the next season to plant again. However, we have perennial basils that will continue to grow, and I'm not saying that one is more important than the other, but if we want to have a resilient system, if we want to have a system where we've got food growing easily all year round, then put in perennials first, get them established, and then work with annuals, have a dedicated area that obviously becomes a high intensity area. Like if you're having to replant it every season, you're going to be preparing the soil again. There is a lot of extra work involved in annuals, but it's a lovely thing. It's so lovely to have snow peas in season, and certain times, the Thai pink egg tomatoes we have a certain season for, but cherry tomatoes self-seed and grow all year round. So you learn about the different niches within your garden and the different areas that you might focus on having annuals, like raised annual beds or areas close to your house because you have more energy in that area. But perennials are fillers that you can put everywhere. And these plants that I'm talking about today are great in a food forest system. The Talinum spinach is wonderful to put under fruit trees. However, what I'm going to do is break it down and talk about each of these plants individually. Before I do that though, I want to talk about superfoods from a permaculture perspective. So there is a plethora of tropical superfoods that you can grow in your garden that will provide health and well-being, and diversity is the key to a healthy diet, but it's also fundamental to garden health. So if you don't know yet, permaculture is the conscious design of cultivated ecosystems that have the diversity, the stability, and the resilience of natural ecosystems. It's a harmonious integration of people into the landscape in such a way that the land grows in richness, productivity, and aesthetic beauty. Now, if you live in a tropical or subtropical area, what this means in the reflection to what I just spoke of in terms of the natural landscapes and natural ecosystems is nature is forming forests. And a lot of the times forests are cut down to grow annual crops. So if we want to look at producing our food from a sustainable perspective, it works in our favor to work with nature and replicate the ecosystems that naturally want to form. So if we live somewhere, if we're inhabiting a specific place and it's grass all around us, but there's forests in the natural, in the native, in the wild areas around us, then that information is telling us that we can replicate forests, but with species that produce food, fiber, medicine for us. So that's the purpose of a food forest, is to work with nature to provide our needs, and of course include the native species. We don't want to be cutting down all of the native forests to grow food forests, but if we're going to replicate a food growing system, let's do a forest. And what I love about food forests is that it's full of mostly perennial plants. There are the seasonal annuals that pop up, but essentially it is the perennial plants that are providing all these amazing functions. So for example, broccoli can be eaten fresh, boiled, steamed, or roasted with spices, and its seeds can be replanted each season to grow more. It is much the same as any other annuals like tomatoes and carrots in that sense, meaning that some of these plants are grown only for eating, be it for our sustenance and flavor and enjoyment. However, perennials offer something more. So perennials are easy to grow and harvest, and when they're well chosen and placed in the right place, they'll produce year round, or they might pop back easily again after winter dormancy. Each year after year, their root systems can access water and nutrients deep in the soil, and that makes them typically more hardy and self-reliant than annual plants. They can withstand difficult conditions and are great for challenging corners. So it is a permaculture strategy to establish perennial plants in a landscape before planting annual crops. I love them because once they're planted, they'll continue to grow without the need to replant each season. So it's kind of a lazy gardener, but maybe just a really good strategy. And so it just means that there's less maintenance, labor, there's not the need to do all of the seed saving, even though that's a fun job, and preparation of garden beds and crop plots. So we definitely have our annual vegetable gardens. They're in the sunniest spots of our gardens, and they're close to our house and our chicken coop, because they're high intensity. Each time we seed out new seedlings or seed direct into the garden for that seasonal enjoyment, whether it's snow peas or Thai pink egg tomatoes or our annual basil. Especially our salad greens throughout winter. We have to prepare the beds. It's like it's a regular job that's done at the beginning of each winter. Whereas the perennials we put in the ground over summer, over the wet season when they're prolific, we're literally cutting them out of the pathways, or we're walking over food. So they're very, very abundant. And other than the rain that falls from the sky and us adding some compost and worm castings and worm tea, they grow very well, as opposed to growing corn. Corn has been one thing that we've tried to grow, and I just notice how much energy, how much fertility we have to add to be able to get a few cobs in corn, in comparison to how much food we get from cassava, which basically grows itself in our garden. So productive perennial plants include fruit and nut trees, edible rhizomes or roots, grasses, fruiting vines, and long-lived spinaches and salad greens, which I think the long-lived spinaches and salad greens are one of the most easiest and accessible things that everybody should just have growing in their garden. The amount of wastage, greens coming in plastic from supermarkets that's days old, most likely sprayed, drives me nuts. When we can really have these plants that I'll talk about today growing like weeds in our garden and providing us with so much more nutrients. So apart from the ease of growing them that I've mentioned thus far, what is really potent here is that these perennial plants actually I see as superfoods, not only because of their nutritional and medicinal purposes, but they also equally provide a stack of ecosystem functions. And what I mean by ecosystem functions is that they provide ecosystem services, they support our diet for health and well-being, and they provide overall diversity for garden health. But these ecosystem services or functions, that across the board we've got supporting functions, provisioning, cultural, and regulating. So consider this. I spoke of annuals before. You plant once, you get it grows for its season, it goes to seed, you save it, and then you wait for the right conditions for the next season. But with these tree and perennial systems, all year long, whilst it's planted, it does these things. Supporting. It provides biodiversity, photosynthesis, soil formation, the obvious food. It helps clean water. It helps perhaps provide, in the terms of what the provisioning aspect, is that they could be plants to feed fish as a protein. They provide wood. They provide pollination. And then there's the regulating aspects of cooling temperatures, creating shade, buffering, control flooding because they're covering the soil. They're purifying water just by their existence and the movement of water through the water table through the ground because of their root systems. They store carbon, they clean air. And then from a cultural perspective, plants are educational. They teach us a lot of things. Recreational, we all can enjoy forest bathing. Aesthetically, they create beauty in our landscape and our wider world. It encourages stewardship, our relationship, the reciprocal nature of working with plants, of harvesting, growing, caring for plants. and they provide habitat for our native animals. And then we're back to that connection with biodiversity and photosynthesis. And as the cycle, the systems, ecosystem services, they are the many functions that are fulfilled through having a perennial food system. So I'm going to start with the first plant, which is Ceylon Spinach. Latin name is Basella Alba Rubra. It is a vine layer within a food forest system. It grows like a vine on the ground or as a vertical climber. It has dye in the seeds that can be used. It protects the soil. It's a poultry food, and the part of the plant that you eat is the leaves. So, as with all the plants, I'm going to share the common names, the origin, a description, growing details, soil and sun, and then, of course, how you eat them. So, Ceylon spinach is otherwise known as Malabar spinach or Indian or vine spinach, and its origin is from Southeast Asia. So, there are many plants with similar climate analogues around the world in tropical regions that we can grow here abundantly, and this is one of them. So, just to give you an idea or description of this plant, it's a leafy vegetable. It can be a short-lived perennial vine, but it will self-seed and you can propagate it from its stems. Now, sometimes in winter, if we have a really cold winter here, it will go dormant, and sometimes it goes completely to, it'll produce a lot of seed. But then by the time summer comes around and it heats up again, the vine will come back. So it's kind of in dormancy. It is in dormancy over winter, and then it proliferates once the weather gets warmer again. But if you're in a true tropical, because we're 400 meters above sea level in Kuranda, probably more subtropical in our microclimate. But if you're in the true tropics, anywhere in Daintree or down on the coast, it's likely this plant is going to grow all year round. Okay, so it is like the leaves are large and oval, and there's white or pink flowers that grow like spikes from the leaf axils. The stems can either be a purple or green. I particularly have the reddy purple vine just because it adds more color into my garden when everything else is green. And for best results, you just pick them when they're young, around 20 centimeters high, and then cut them back to the first node. And this allows the vine to keep growing and keep harvesting. Pinching out the ends of the vine helps to make it branch, and then it becomes less leggy, like you would do with pumpkins. A pumpkin vine, it just gives more vitality to it. So you can ramble it along the ground, but it's really easier to pick the leaves if the tendrils are trained onto a trellis or up another tree. The purple red dye was actually used to stamp documents by the Chinese government officials. And my kids love playing with them. So they've dyed all sorts of things. But they just draw all over each other, paint each other in this purple dye, and then they just wash it off. But you end up with very purple hands. It's a beautiful color. As I said, it grows rampantly in the wet season, and it's great actually to use as a cover crop and then turn into the soil over winter. So that's an easy wet season cover crop too. And when I say cover crop, what I mean is once your annual beds are finished and it's just too epically wet to grow annuals, you can just plant these into the Ceylon spinach into your vegetable bed and just let it go rampant over the wet season. You can eat from it, and then you can just turn it back into the soil and prepare your bed for your annuals next year. But otherwise, just have this planted all through your food forest and anywhere you have some trellising. So in terms of growing, it is easily propagated. You just grab a piece of the stem. You can put it in water and watch the roots grow, and then plant it into the ground. Or you can just pop it when it's raining. You can literally cut it and then pop it into the soil in a location you want it to grow. But also the dark purple seeds or green seeds, depending on whether you have the purple or the green vine. can be planted in the soil as well. So that's two ways: propagating by seed or by cutting. And those seeds are viable for up to 5 years. So that's what I mean by it will self-perpetuate. Once you've got it in your garden, it will find its little niche and grow itself. But it's also not weedy, as in you can easily pull it out if you need to. It thrives in a variety of moist or wet conditions and pretty much grows all year round. It prefers a moderate to rich loam soil and in full to partial shade. I have noticed the plants that I have that have a bit more shade than full sun will have bigger, softer leaves. The ones that growing in the sun tend to curl up and harden. I think that's just its own way of hardening and dealing with excess sunlight. So in terms of eating, wow, it is rich in vitamins A and C and the minerals iron and calcium. Specifically iron, really high in iron. So if you have any iron deficiencies, this is an excellent plant. And I'll just tell you a little anecdotal story here is that I used to have, this is one of the first plants that I brought into my permaculture system where I started my first garden, and I had it at my front door, a sprawling vine at the entrance. And every day I would eat this. I never needed to buy spinach. I'd always, and I was off gluten, so I'd grab one of the big leaves and I'd poach an egg and use it as bread, basically, use it as wraps, because some of the leaves can get as big as your hand. And so I was a vegetarian. I wasn't eating any meat, but I was giving blood at the time at the blood bank. And they said to me that I had a really good iron count and that my blood was a really good quality. And they're like, wow, what do you do? Do you eat a lot of meat? And my response was, I don't, but I eat a lot of Ceylon spinach. So there you go. So you can substitute this spinach for an English spinach or silver beet in any recipe where it's calling for them. And when you prepare it, you simply just wash the leaves and remove the thicker stalk before chopping and blanching it. You can eat it fresh, as in like a salad, or you can blanch it and cook it. It combines really well with soft cheeses and pine nuts, and it's really nice tossed fresh into like an Asian stir fry. And the dark fruit, as mentioned before, can be used as a dye, so you can color jellies or use as a natural fabric dye. And what's important about this and many of these tropical greens is that it has I've got to get this word right, mucilaginous qualities, which are used for thickening and like in cooking, but also for aiding in digestion. So I just want to make a little note here before I jump onto the next plant. But the mucilage aspect of a lot of the tropical greens is actually what our bodies need when we're in the tropics. So it's gut healing, it's very soothing, it's very cooling. So from a herbalism and medicinal aspect, in summer, we're dealing with a high level of heat. We're losing a lot of, we're sweating a lot. And so these plants, interestingly, are really abundant at this time. And when we eat them, they help our bodies cool down from excess heat. And they also help with lining the gut. So in this journey, my health journey and my permaculture journey really started at the same time. I had a leaky gut and a lot of allergies and basically a lot of issues with my gut. And so that got me looking into the food system, got me into permaculture, got me into growing my own garden. And what I learned is that a lot of these tropical greens that I speak of so highly is that they are gut healers, and that mucilage aspect might be a little bit difficult for some people at times, like the ibeca. When it's cooked, it releases a mucilage, which I personally love now because I know the medicinal benefits to it. And so it's just something to remember. Some have more mucilage than others. The leaf ginseng that I'm about to talk about is an excellent salad green that doesn't have a high level of mucilage in it. Okay, so the leaf ginseng. This, other than the sweet leaf, which I'm not talking about today because I could do a whole episode on sweet leaf, this plant is one of the tastiest fresh eating salad leaves. So the Ceylon I prefer. I do like it raw, but it's a great one cooked. This leaf ginseng is so good blended in smoothies and just literally picked and eaten fresh for any replacement of lettuce that you need in a salad. So in terms of function, leaf ginseng, the Latin name is Talinum Triangular, and its common names are waterleaf, Suriname purslane, Philippine spinach, or Florida spinach. So it gives you an idea there of places that they grow. But function-wise, they belong in the herbaceous layer of a food forest. They're great as edging plants. You eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers, you can stir fry the stems. It's highly medicinal, and it's a great plant to pop in the shade. Grows in sun too, but if you're trying to find a niche to put plants in shade, like under established fruit trees, then this is a great one for that. So its origin is from Africa, and description wise, it's a fast growing perennial bush that is up to 60 centimeters high with a soft main stem and branches to 30 to 100 centimeters high, and they form an attractive clumping plant. So you can actually kind of shape these as a little bush. Now, the small pink flowers are very attractive, and they make a really good, a very pretty garden edge border. And of course, you can use the pretty flowers, for many things. The bright green leaves are broad and fleshy in texture, and as I said, super delicious in salads. It self sows very readily. And again, it's abundant in the tropics, will go dormant if you have a colder winter. And it's revered throughout Asia for its medicinal uses, similar to Panax ginseng, which is why it's called tropical ginseng in its common name. And the reason why is because it has blood building properties and it's a rejuvenating tonic. So it is really an esteemed leaf vegetables, and it's well utilized for people like children and pregnant women to help with growth and development. So if you're pregnant, eat a lot of this. And it's often made as a tea for people with anemia or fatigue, fluid retention, headaches, nervous ailments, and menstrual regularity. So apart from eating it as a fresh green, you can boil it up and drink it as a tea. As far as growing it, it's super easy to propagate from cuttings. During the wet season, you just pull a little bit off, take the top leaves off, pop it in the spot you want it to grow. It will grow roots, and off it goes. You can also take a cutting, put it in a glass of water, see the roots grow out the bottom, and then replant it again. Or you can just leave it in its spot, and the leaves will pop, the seeds will pop, and it will continue to grow into other aspects of your garden. And like many of the tropical greens that I talk about as perennials, they will find once you put it in your system, they will find their own niches and they will grow themselves. And what I mean by that is your garden, your perennial garden will start gardening itself. It's really incredible to see. It prefers also a moderate to rich loam soil and partial shade. And it likes to be kept moist as well. So don't pop it near the cactus. Okay, so as far as eating, it is crunchy, tangy, and nutritious. When I say nutritious, I mean it's high in protein and rich in vitamins A, B1, B2, B3, vitamin C, E, and mineral-wise calcium, iron, magnesium, manganese, and potassium. The leaves and flowers can be eaten raw in salads as mentioned, or lightly cooked as a green vegetables and stir fries. My favorite go-to is to blend it in banana smoothies. And yeah, it has that cooling effect on the body. So in summer, you can substitute lettuce and just put your Talinum spinach in. One thing about this one though is that there is information out there to say that if you suffer from kidney disorders, gout, or rheumatoid arthritis, then you should really limit consumption. So, as with all information on this website, on this podcast, and in my episodes, it is always great to talk to a qualified nutritionist, dietitian, or herbalist in regards to this information. And then we have the amazing Moringa, otherwise known in its Latin name as Moringa Oliefera. Other common names though is horseradish tree, drumstick tree, bend tree, and miracle tree. And this is why it's known as miracle tree. First of all, the origin is Africa and Asia, and its place in a food forest is the middle story. It's great for chicken and beef forage, so plant near a chicken coop. A nitrogen fixer, although some people, there is mixed information around whether it releases a lot of nitrogen in its nodules. However, other people say it does, so there you go. And you can eat all parts of this plant. And what is super interesting is that it's a water purifier. So, description. It's a fast-growing deciduous tree that grows up to 8 meters high with a drooping spread of 3 meters. The stems is erect with a soft wood inside that's kind of like a cork-like bark. And the leaves are fern-like, about 50 centimeters long. The flowers are white and fragrant. The fruit is pod-like, hence the name drumsticks. And those pods or seed pods or the fruit can be up to 30 centimeters long. The nectar source for bees, the flowers the bees just love the flowers. And it provides fuel and raw material for cellophane and textile production. So it has so many uses, this plant. It's commonly used as a living fence, so you can propagate it and put it in as fence posts and then just keep coppicing and using it. It's not going to kill the plant, it's just going to keep growing back with a thicker trunk. It is used as an aid plant in third world countries, and it is widely known as a superfood. So you would be able to buy powdered moringa, but better yet, anyone in the tropics and subtropics can grab a little cutting off somebody with a tree, put it in your soil, and have your go-to fresh moringa with all of these other ecosystem functions to enjoy within your own gardens. So the powdered seeds are added to the surface of turbid water, and when it becomes clear within a couple of hours, it indicates that it's taken the bacteria and other microorganisms with the sediment down to the bottom. And it's, you can YouTube and find out more information about what the process is. But it's just really interesting that the seeds can be blended and sprinkled over water and purify the water. I think I can see why it's used as an aid plant. An excellent chicken food, I've mentioned before. So as far as growing them, it's easily propagated by planting in spring and summer, and you can just place the woody cuttings upright in the soil. So just propagate some of the woody cuttings, and off it goes. That works really well in very wet tropical places. Otherwise, you can grow it from seed. But as far as the cutting, you should probably use 2.5 centimeters to about a 4 centimeter thick cutting, and maybe at least 20 to 30 centimeters long. So you can see on the stem there's about 3 buds per cutting that comes out from the stem. That gives you a bit of an idea of what size works well when propagating. And space them about 1.4 meters apart, so that if you so there's enough space for them to grow. Really, you have like a bit of a living fence if you do it that way. Or you could just plant it as a standalone tree. Interestingly, it grows in many climates, so from semi-arid zones on marginal soils and also in high rainfall areas with fertile soils. Full sun or partial shade. It's very drought tolerant. I just find it really interesting that it can be planted into any soil and it grows. So where do the nutrients come from? That's my question, because you put this little stick into the soil. Of course, it needs some water until it's established. But for the size of the tree that forms over its duration into maturity, the incredible level of medicine that comes out of that from often depleted soil is an interesting thing to consider. Like the genetics of that plant, it almost produces nutrients from out of nowhere. Something to ponder. In terms of eating, it's very pungent, which is why it also has the common name of horseradish. So the pungent root is used as a substitute for horseradish and can be eaten as a vegetable or pickled. The young foliage and flowers are a very available source of vitamins A and C, and it's high in calcium and phosphorus as well. Interestingly, the leaves contain up to 38% protein. Like pigeon pea, they both high protein plants. You can cook the leaves. So if you add it to soups or stews or curries or pickles, meaning you've added heat and cooked them, then it takes away that horseradish heat. But if you eat it fresh, then you get that kind of nose clearing horseradishy flavor to it. You can also use the young seeds as a vegetable, and the mature seeds can be roasted and eaten like peanuts. And you can, of course, add the leaves to tea for all the medicinal qualities. Very interesting. Another anecdotal story for the moringa is that when I was pregnant with Nova, I just picked some leaves to eat as I was walking around the garden, which I had done most days leading up to that for years. And I just got an automatic reflux, and my body was just telling me, oh no, don't eat that, that's not good. So I went back to the books and I did some research, and it actually is not good for pregnant women. So it can be an abortive. But on the other side of that, once you've birthed baby and you are breastfeeding, then it's a real ally for helping with breast milk, quality breast milk, and abundance of that. So just keeping in mind that there might be plants that you eat all of the time and have a good relationship with, and that can change in different seasons of your life as well. And if you are tuned in and you're eating fresh from the garden, a lot of the times you get that direct feedback in your body and you will know. But it's really good to back it up with the facts and looking at the research that's out there too. So that's all I'm going to share on those 3 plants. I think there's lots of information there for you to consider and to source some cuttings and start building your own relationship with these incredible edibles. But I will touch now, before I go, on a tropical food forest, because I did mention in the beginning of each of those plants where they fit into a food forest. So basically there are up to 8 layers within a food forest. If we observe and look at the forestry systems around us, we can see that there are multiple layers happening. So just a quick overview of that is there's the ground level, layer 8, which is the microbiology, and that's known as the support system. So you can introduce mushroom cultures, mushrooms into your system, or they will naturally start occurring just through the breakdown of organic matter. And then above that, you have layer 7, which is the rhizosphere, which includes vegetables and nuts and spices that are basically on the ground in the herb. So you think turmeric and ginger and things like that. Peanuts, they all grow in that sort of in the soil with leaves up above the ground. Then layer 6 is your ground covers. So they may include herbs, other fruits and vegetables that creep and crawl and sit just above the ground level, not in the soil. I mean, as in just their roots are in the soil, not their actual edible part. And then layer 5 is vines. So again, they can be fruits, vegetables, they can be used for tools, as in harvested, and for making tools and different spices as well. And so that vines can grow along the ground as a ground cover, but also vertically up the other layers. So layer 4, which is herbs, many of those leafy greens I just talked about, grasses, more fruit trees and other spice plants. You have layer 3, shrubs, which are larger herbs, more fruits, tea, coffee. And then the middle story, layer 2, which are large understory fruit and nut trees. And then you have your canopy, which are large and fruit nut trees. So food forest gardens are really the ultimate aim because they are mainly perennial systems and they don't require a high lot of inputs or resources or human energy or fertilizers or pesticides. So essentially, if we're growing a food forest, we are replicating the pattern of the natural forests and we're incorporating polycultural plant systems that become regenerative once established. They are innately productive. And generally, a food forest in the tropics will have these 8 layers that I just spoke about. In my book, I've got the different layers from 1 to 8 and different plants that you can plug into those different layers, which makes it really easy when you're wanting to design and establish your fruit tree. So just as an example, some of your canopy fruit trees might be avocado, black sapote, breadfruit, cashew, durian, ice cream bean, jackfruit, macadamia, rollinia, tamarind, sapotes, just as some examples on that list. And then your middle story could be plants like papaya, mulberry, carambola, coca, jaboticaba, lemon myrtle, mangosteen, moringa that I just spoke of, just to name a few. And then as an example of vines that you could have integrated, there's obviously the Ceylon spinach I just spoke of and gave a description for. There's also a heap of different climbing beans like snake beans. You've got dragon fruit, a whole heap of different gourds. You can grow your own cleaning gourds or make your own cups and bowls out of hardened gourds. There's Madagascar beans, the loofahs, pumpkin, vanilla, wing beans, and then ground covers like goticola, cancon, brahmi, sweet potato, and the list goes on. So I hope that gives you some insight into the value of having a food forest and a perennial system to produce food, fiber, and medicine for yourself and your family and extending out into your community. And I just want to finish today by saying that sustainable eating means eating locally grown food. And it requires us as people to expand our tastes, try new recipes, and dig in so that the plants that grow well in our climates become part of our food culture. I know that this was heavy on the tropical and subtropical plants. You could grow these if you lived in Melbourne or cooler climates, provided you made yourself a little hothouse microclimate. They are smaller plants, so you could have them in pots and have them available all year round as well. So creating microclimates is one way to do that. But what I urge you to do actually is look at your own environment and how your ecosystem is expressing itself, and then actually tuning into the plants that grow like weeds super easy in your specific climate and working with them, because truly they're your superfoods. They grow well, they're not going to be stressed out, they're expressing themselves in the full support of the climate and the soil and the sun conditions that are being provided. And so what you're receiving through eating them or drinking them is going to be of a high potency, but also they're there doing their work and playing their ecosystem functions in that particular spot. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you want to learn about other plants in my book, then maybe drop a comment in this episode and let me know, and I will make that happen for you. We now have a special way for you to support this podcast and us as presenters, which is to buy us a CUPPA. That's in the show notes, and it just shows us that if we're doing something that you're enjoying here and you want to keep on doing it, it helps cover our time, which is all on a volunteer basis. All right, much love. Bye now. The Elder Tree is a not-for-profit organisation that is in the beginning stages of creating a grassroots herbal education centre and healing sanctuary in the Atherton Tablelands of Far North Queensland. To find out more, go to theeldertree.org and follow the journey on Instagram and Facebook. You can also donate to the Elder Tree via our podcast channel on Anchor or via the website. If you like the episode, we'd love you to subscribe. And if you know who we should interview next, drop us a line. See you next month, and in the meantime, may you grow them to know them and be blessed with good health and many plants.